gatto, mister matto.
Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to another all-new edition of Geek to Me Radio. Today we are joined by former Marvel Comics editor, current Valiant Comics editor, Heather Antos, talking all about her amazing career. We'll also be discussing Funko Pop's customized Broadway edition with Amber Kempter from BroadwayGoesPop.com. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors, 4 Hogwarts houses, 1 ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And we thank you for listening to us once again on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. This show, as always, brought to you by the wonderful people in historic St. Charles. That website, discoverstcharles.com. We will talk about them a little bit more as the show progresses, but I want to get right to our first interview. We're joined now by Heather Antos, the editor for Valiant Comic Books, previously with Marvel, and we're going to talk all about her work. Heather, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks very much for taking time out of your, what I'm sure is a busy schedule to talk with us on the radio.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I mean, Comic-Con's only next week. So, we're pretty lax around here.
Right. I'm sure. Not much going on. Now that you're with Valiant, I began reading Valiant back when they started up in the 90s with Exo Man of War, Shadow Man, the big crossovers they did for Unity. And it's so cool to see that ever since this kind of revival, I guess, in 2012, how Valiant's just really kind of pushed the boundaries, taken the bull by the horns, as it were, and really stayed true to their roots, but also they're creating these great new characters. It's got to be such a great time for you to come in now as editor with this group.
Oh my gosh, it's honestly the best time here to be working in the Valiant universe. As you said, with the relaunch just a few years ago, everything's been, refreshed and made to fit a more modern audience. But like you said, it's still staying true to the core of the universe and core of the characters. But what's most exciting is, as we're gearing up towards 2020 with the release of the Bloodshot film, things are only getting bigger, things are only getting greater, and we're only doing more stuff. So there's no limits right now, and it's just a lot of fun to be playing in this wheelhouse.
And talking about some of the newer characters, not new characters per se, Livewire was back in Harbinger books, and characters like Faith, who were around in the original Harbinger. But the new characters and the mix of old, how is that balancing between kind of merging these, not two separate worlds per se, but kind of blending the new in with the old? Or is there any, what are the difficulties, I guess?
I mean, there's not really any difficulties. It's more about, just like any storytelling, it's all about keeping things organic and, you just don't force anything. These characters already existed in this universe anyway, so they're already aware of each other, or they're aware of, the whereabouts of different things, and it's just bringing someone new to the forefront. It's just like in Thor, Jane Foster wasn't always a big deal, but then slowly you brought her to the forefront, and then she got her own book. It's the same exact thing. Fans latch on to these characters and their love and excitement for these characters is contagious with other fans, and that's what gets more fans to pick up these books. And us as publishers will realize this, especially with social media and conventions out there now. You know, things like Harbinger. It's like, oh wait, no, like people are picking up Harbinger because of Livewire. People are picking up Harbinger because of Faith. Like, let's give them their own shot.
And it's got to be, I could never be an editor because I have trouble saying no to people, but it's got to be, I guess, part of the difficulty, especially in a position as editor where you might love the ideas people are bringing to you, but you've got to, draw a line, say no, well, let's take it in this direction. As a creative person, I would also think that they might be some hurt feelings. How is it, how have you found working as an editor, obviously doing freelance work with stuff that's a little easier, I guess, versus a corporate type entity like Marvel or Valiant?
I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's all about keeping things professional. When we're hiring writers or artists for things, like, they understand that we're the client, and so at the end of the day, their job is to give us what we want. It's our job as editors to make our vision clear for what we need / want, and but it's it's us giving them the keys and tools in order to tell the best story that they can with these characters. And it is difficult sometimes when things don't work out or the pitch isn't exactly what you want, and you'll get to a certain point where you realize, you know what, this just isn't working. Maybe this isn't the right casting. But that happens. That's few and far between. It's at the end of the day, it's just, remembering as editors, our job, our goal is to protect the integrity of the character and the integrity of the book. And luckily, most of our writers, or just writers in comics in general, are such fans of the world and the characters that that's what they want too. So, we're all on the same page. We're all on the same team. We all just want to tell great stories about these characters.
Working backwards from it, talking about your work on Marvel with especially the Star Wars books. Star Wars obviously had originally been kind of taken over by Dark Horse. They had the whole expanded universe. For Marvel to get those rights back and be able to tell those stories, and for you to be right there when all that happened, I mean, anybody getting to work on Star Wars, it had to have been a dream come true.
I still can't believe I did it. I mean, like, I was the kid who grew up on the playground, playing. I was Princess Leia on the playground growing up, and in high school and college, I would sit with my D&D group, and we had a Star Wars tabletop game that we played for 6 years, where we would sit around and tell, like, the stories of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Han Solo did this, or wouldn't it be cool if we did this with Darth Vader? And then that became my job. I got paid to have those same conversations and then make those stories canon. And it's so incredibly lucky, and the Star Wars fans are the best fans in the world. Their passion is just so strong, and they're so excited, and they love this franchise, and to get to be a part of it at a time like 2015 when it came back to Marvel, when the new movie was coming out, like, it was just, it's unexplainable. There's no words that can describe what it was like.
And I'm wondering, too, working on, obviously, when you've got the standalone Star Wars stories and you've got the Princess Leia and Darth Vader books, but then there's also the movie adaptations like Force Awakens. Are they harder to work on the direct movie adaptations than doing the kind of creator-owned, Marvel-owned stories on their own, or is it not really much difference?
They're different processes for sure. I mean, with like Kieran and Jason Aaron's run on Star Wars, those are new stories that have to be vetted and go up the food chain and make sure they fit with the rest of the universe and continuity. But with things like Force Awakens or Last Jedi or the Rogue One adaptations, what makes that a challenge is, everyone's already knows the story. They've seen it. So how do you keep it fresh and exciting and get them something new, tell it in a different perspective, so that fans who pick up the books feel like they're getting something that they didn't get in the theater. And so, like, that's the tricky part there is, oh, well, maybe we can tell this scene from someone else's perspective, tell this from a stormtrooper's perspective instead of Jim's, or things like that. And, of course, that has to get vetted as well. So ultimately, it depends on what challenge you're up for.
And we should mention, too, you are the co-creator of Gwenpool, which kind of took off unbelievably. Was that when you worked on it originally, was there any thought in your mind that this would be such a big deal?
And we're going to get that answer about Gwenpool from Heather Antos, editor of Valiant Comics, right after this. Stand by.
Hey, this is Greg Grunberg, Snap Wexley from Star Wars, and it's all geek to me, my friends.
Welcome back, listeners. Before we went to break, we were talking with Heather Antos, former editor of the Star Wars books on Marvel Comics, now current editor of Valiant, but we had to get into her co-creation, Gwenpool, which was a cross between Gwen Stacy and Deadpool that she did for Marvel Comics during her run there. And here's what she had to say about creating Gwenpool.
We had no idea. Like, she came from a variant cover, and people people latched onto that variant cover and automatically started doing fan art. They started doing cosplays of her, and we saw this as an opportunity to do something new. This has never really happened before in comics, and we really wanted to create something special. And I can't, to be able to create a brand new character that's not really based on anything in the universe aside from a costume, and to have her last 25 issues in this era that, Iceman and Gambit can't last 5 issues on their own, it's remarkable. And that just speaks to the love for her that the fans had. And to see her now in video games and statues and toys and merchandise, it's as you said, it's unbelievable. It's amazing, and I love her fans more than anything in the world.
And now that you're over at Valiant, you mentioned the Bloodshot movie coming out, I think, in February of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Correct.
And that's got to be such a big deal, especially with the glut's not the right word, but the huge amount of comic book adapted properties we're seeing with Umbrella Academy on Netflix, and we're getting a new Hellboy movie, and to have finally the Valiant world on the big screen. Again, you're working at Valiant during this time must be just amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, I've only been with Valiant a little over 2 months now, and just a couple weeks ago, we sat down and got to watch the sizzle reel for the Bloodshot film, and what the directors and the studio have in mind and are planning, and it's just amazing. And it's so cool to see their vision that early on, and how they want to bring a comic book character to life in a movie universe and have it make sense. And to have someone with the fan base and the cred that Vin Diesel has as the character is super exciting. There's a lot of other Hollywood deals in development with our character. So it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning, and I wish I could talk more about the stuff that we're working on, but unfortunately I can't. But it all looks so awesome, and I'm very excited, and next year can't come soon enough.
So maybe this might not be a question you can answer then, but I'm curious, obviously, if Bloodshot does well, which I can't imagine it wouldn't do well, with DC recently deciding they're going to back off from doing interconnected world and kind of doing standalone movies with their characters, Marvel having great success the opposite way, doing kind of combined universe. Are you even able to comment on whether or not we will get like a Bloodshot and a Shadow Man and a Faith that are interconnected, or will they be standalone movies, or is that not anything you can mention?
I plead the fifth.
All right. Fair enough. I just figured I'd ask. A very exciting time, though, to see all this stuff happening, and I think everyone's on the edge of their seat waiting to see what we'll get next as soon as the new one comes out. We've got, I got to mention Penguins, because your Twitter feed talking about all of the different, the fans jumped on it too. Your followers and the fan of Valiant Comics were giving ideas for here's Exo Penguin or Exo Penguin of War or whatever they were doing. Did that surprise you how quickly everyone took to that and was throwing ideas at you?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, penguins are kind of my brand. I love penguins a lot. Even before I was at Marvel, I was poking, Deadpool creators, when are we going to get a penguin pool? When are we going to get a penguin pool? And so it kind of became a thing with Marvel talent that I worked with to sneak penguins into every single comic I worked on. So in the Deadpool 2099 comics, there's a Penguin Pool 2099 hidden in the background. On the Deadpool 300 cover, where there's 300 Deadpools, there's a penguin pool on it, et cetera, et cetera. Gwenpool has a penguin backpack. Annie Mae and Renew Your Vows had penguin posters on her walls. it got to the point where artists who I was friends with started sneaking penguins in comics that I had nothing to do with. And it's just a lot of fun. And so I just started joking on Twitter one day. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to, do penguins in the Valiant universe? And the Valiant fans just hopped onto it. And I started getting fan art. And I have a wall of Valiant Penguin fan art in my office. I've collected it all. I have like 20 different pieces. It's incredible. We've got the Eternal Waddler for the Eternal Warrior, Peng Mambo, Shadow Gwen. Like it's incredible, and that just speaks to I think the love of fun and the love of these characters that Valiant fans have, which it's really made me feel just like so welcomed into the Valiant family, because the Valiant fans are so fierce, and so to see them latch on to my absurdity right from the get-go was very heartwarming.
It must be very rewarding, because a lot of people, they might be like a Marvel fan or DC fan, but you've got a very strong following on Twitter. We should mention it's at Heather Antos if you'd like to follow her on Twitter and Instagram, the website heatherantos.com. But you've got a following all your own that has just gravitated with you as you move, to what would you attribute that in an age where fandom can be fickle at certain points, but you've got such a loyal following? To what would you attribute that?
I honestly, I'm blown away by it all the time. I don't necessarily understand it, but I'm so thankful and grateful for the love and support of my fans that I have. I make these books and tell these stories for them. They love these characters, and that's why I do it. I remember when I was just going to Comic Cons and meeting creators and meeting editors, and to get that one-on-one reaction and conversation and just say hello, and just share my love of Batman with Scott Snyder as a fan, and have that conversation with Jerry Duggan when I was reading The Good, Bad, and the Ugly out of college, and what that story meant to me, and to have, see a creator like my tweet or see a creator respond to me made me feel really special, and it made me want to just support them more. And so, that's a very important thing for me. I love my fans. I love talking to my fans, meeting my fans at cons. And I think that's just so important, because we, as creators, wouldn't be telling our stories without their support. And I think that's very important for all creators to remember. And, your fans are your family.
And looking down the pike of what we can expect coming up from Valiant, there's a lot of great books to be read. Do you have any particular favorites that you think the fans should be on the watch out for that are coming out either in March or April that are really have you excited?
Oh my gosh, Punk Mambo is about to come out with Cullen Bunn and Adam Gorham. It's a fun action, kind of creepy book, but a girl with a pink mohawk. I mean, what's not to love? And then Forgotten Queen is launching, which is a fun fantasy action hero book. Incursion's coming out right now, which is just some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful art. This summer we're just launching Psylords, which has been teased literally for years. So that's coming out. Lots of big things are happening. The books have never looked better. The talent has never been greater. And it's, as we said, we're only building to better and stronger things towards 2020 with the launch of the film universe.
Very exciting. You can follow Valiant Comics at Valiant Comics on Twitter, and of course the website, so you can get more information on the books we just mentioned, valiantentertainment.com. Heather Antos, editor for Valiant Comics, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I would love to talk again sometime.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll run across you. We do cons occasionally. Hopefully we'll get the chance to actually meet face-to-face, and I'll bring a Gwenpool statue for you to sign.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for your time today. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too.
Heather Antos, editor of Valiant Comics. We're going to take our next break, come right back talking with Amber Kempter, the founder and CEO of Broadway Goes Pop. For all you Broadway and Funko Pop fans out there, stand by.
Hi, this is Barry Bostwick. And damn it, Janet, would you just keep listening and come back to Geek to Me Radio, will you?
I've one thing to say, and that's damn it, Janet, I love you.
We are back. I love social media because you find such interesting people on it. If you're on social media, please follow me at Geek to Me Radio on Twitter and Instagram. And on Instagram, I came across an account. Amber Kempter has a company called Broadway Goes Pop, where she takes Funko Pops, which everyone loves Funko Pops, and she custom makes them into Broadway characters. And they're based on a lot of the new ones like Dear Evan Hansen and Hamilton Pops that aren't made by Funko. But we reached out to her because it was such a cool site, and I loved her Instagram feed. You can follow her. We'll get more into that as we interview her. But we ended up having a nice little chat with Amber Kempter.
We're talking now with Amber Kempter, the owner and creator of Broadway Goes Pop, which I found on Instagram, and it's very cool. If you're a Funko Pop fan, she does the Funko Pops in the style of some fascinating Broadway characters. Amber, thanks very much for talking to us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So this is such a cool idea. Everybody loves Funko Pops, and there's that huge crossover between the Broadway world and the geek world. What was the impetus that started this idea for you?
It's been about almost 3 years. We're getting close to 3 years ago. I got obsessed with Hamilton, the musical, obviously, just about everybody is these days. And I was really aware of Funko Pops, and I've always thought they were super cute, and I've always, loved the different lines they've made for TV and movie shows. So I did a quick Google search to see if they had created a Hamilton line, because I thought this is a really popular show. That would make a lot of sense. And discovered that they had not done a line, and also discovered that they didn't even have Broadway at all. And so in that search, I discovered also that customizing Pops is a thing that people did. I didn't even know that existed. So I did some research, did a lot of Googling and watching different YouTube videos, and decided that I would just, sit down and try making the Pops for myself just for fun. I've always been very, crafty and artsy and like to have a creative outlet. So I took a long time for me to just finally decide to actually do it. Ordered some parts, sat down and literally on my living room floor and painted my first Pop, which was Hamilton. And I posted it in a Hamilton fan group on Facebook, and everyone just kind of went crazy, and they kept talking about, you should sell these are amazing, where can I buy one, how can I get one? So at the time I was working full-time at an insurance company, so and I'm a mom of 3, so very busy, obviously. Yeah, so I decided to just kind of do it on the side, a few here and there, just for some extra spending money. And I created a group on Facebook to sell them. And honestly, it got to the point where I couldn't keep up with all 3 of those things, being a mom, working 40 hours a week, and doing the Broadway Goes Pop on the side. So
you sold your kids.
Yeah. That might have been an easier leap, honestly. Probably a little less expensive too, to get rid of the 3 kids. So it was about 6 months after I started that first Pop. I put my 2 weeks in at my quote unquote real job and decided to go forward with Broadway Goes Pop full time. And it was a very scary leap. I had a really good job with great benefits and quite stable at a really good company. So it was a scary leap, but it's been now 2 years since I quit my job, and I haven't looked back once and regretted that decision for 1 minute. So Broadway Goes Pop has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing that you took
Thank
something
you.
you love. That's every person's dream is to find something they love to do and be able to make a living at it. That's fantastic. So congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I see on your Instagram you travel a lot. You take in some shows here and there. How much, I guess, of a Broadway fan were you before this notion ever came to you? Did you see shows on the regular? What was your intake of Broadway culture like?
So I've always been a huge musical theater fan. My parents took my sister and I to see shows when we were really little. We went to, every community theater show that was in our hometown and, the high school shows and regional theaters. The first big show I saw was Phantom of the Opera when I was in 5th grade, after my grandma got me super obsessed with it. So I've always been a huge Broadway fan. Now, I will say when my kids were little and I was very busy with 3 of them running around, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to the new stuff coming to Broadway. I would still listen to, the old classics, Les Miserables, Phantom, Wicked, and those, but I wasn't so much paying attention to what was new until Hamilton. And then when I got obsessed with Hamilton and Broadway Goes Pop took off, now I really keep my finger on the pulse of what's new. So I do try to make it to New York City a few times a year, because I do live in Omaha, Nebraska. So I try to make it out to New York City a few times a year to see, new shows and get some new inspiration. It's always better for me if I can see a show in person to make new pops, and I just get much more inspired that way. We do also get a lot of really good theater here in Omaha. We get a lot of the tours come through here because Omaha's a pretty big city, and we have some fantastic regional theaters here too. So theater's always been a part of my life, always, and my kids are all theater obsessed, all 3 of them. So it's really cool to have blended 2 passions with musical theater and art and created it, and now that's basically my entire life.
And we're going to come right back after this break talking more about Broadway Funko Pops customized by Amber Kempter from BroadwayGoesPop.com. After this message, stand by.
Hi, this is John Glover, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio. I love a good geek.
We're back. Who doesn't love a good geek? And who doesn't love a good Funko Pop? Amber Kempter is our current guest. We're speaking with her about her love of Broadway and combining that with the Funko Pop craze that's taking us over.
And you said staying current on musicals. I know that the Prom musical was one that just is hit, and you've already got some Funkos out from that.
Yes.
What's one of the older, like the classic? Do you do any like Rodgers and Hammerstein? How far back do you go into the Broadway repertoire to pull some of your inspirations from?
Sure. Those would be ones, they would have to be requested or ordered, I would say. I try to stick with what's new, although I have done, Phantom. I did a Phantom, I've done a Christine. Those aren't as far back as you're saying. But I do, in my queue, have a Hello Dolly Pop that was requested that will be coming out. So it really just depends on what my customers are wanting and asking for.
So with the Hello Dolly Pop, I got to ask, was it Carol or Babs?
I think actually it's going to be Bette Midler, because it was from the revival. Yeah.
I was wondering, with Carol Channing having just tragically passed, have you gotten any requests for Carol Channing pops?
Not pops, but I do make pins also, and I have discussed with people doing like a Carol Channing pin as a memorial to her. So that has been thrown around for sure.
And so with the ordering from people that are getting these from you, do you start out with the prototype and say, hey, look, I made this Hamilton one, and people request that? Or is it 50-50? You get a lot of people saying, hey, I'd really like to have this particular pop from this particular show.
Yeah, it's a little of both. I have some pops that I've made them so long, they don't take me as long. I could basically, at this point, make them in my sleep. So I will, make a batch of those and sell those. But then also, I'll, do the custom orders and do them that way, which is a fun way for me to branch out a bit. I don't always have to make the same pops over and over again. And it's, something new to give to my customers also.
And on average, you said like you can make them in your sleep. If you just do a one-off, how long are we talking like a day? Are we talking like an hour? How long does it usually take for you to bust one of these out?
I usually work on about 20 of them at a time, so it's really hard for me to like put a finger on how long each one takes. I would say start to finish, if I was just going to sit down and do one, I could probably get one done in 2 to 3 hours if I was just working on one, but it really depends on what it is. Some of them take much longer than others. I made a Rum Tum Tugger from Cats once, and just a paint job alone took me an entire day. So,
wow.
And that was after lots of sculpting and, other things. So it really truly depends on the pop and the details that are involved, and sometimes the paint colors too. Sometimes paint colors, some cover better than others, so sometimes we take more coats. So it really just depends on the pop. But I would say if I was to just take a stab at it, 2 to 3 hours for a simple pop.
And so are you able to keep up with the volume of orders on your own, or do you have are you putting your children to work helping you, or are you almost at the point now where you need to hire someone on? How's it going so far?
Yeah, no, it's pretty busy. I'm usually further behind than I'd like to be. My kids do help me a lot with packaging up orders, especially with pins because it's such a high volume. My 11-year-old is extremely good at helping me package up. I can read her the orders, and she grabs the items, and I put them in the package and slap the label on. So they're always willing to help with that. I haven't quite let the reins out on letting them help me paint quite yet. But my mom actually helps me a lot with the painting. She's really good at throwing some of those initial coats on. So she's helped me out a lot. But other than that, it's just me. So I have explored the idea of having some kind of assistant, but I've been talking about that for over a year, and it still hasn't happened. I have a hard time delegating. I just want to do everything myself. So
it is, especially when it's your baby, to give that over to somebody else and say, okay, do this. Then you're kind of like, oh, you're doing it right because this is my project.
Yeah.
I need to make sure the quality's there.
Exactly.
That can be tough.
Yes. Yeah.
And is this all?
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, my oldest daughter, I tried to have her sit down with me once and help me paint, and it was just it was so overwhelming. It was like, no, that's not right. That's not right. Nope, that's not right. And so we had to just eliminate that idea at least for now.
And is this all still from your home? Do you have an office or a separate building? What volume of pops do you buy for custom making on? Do you buy them by the bulk, by the month, or is there a certain kind of pop style that's better for you for doing customization?
I do everything. I have a studio in my basement. But previously to this, it was just what I called my craft room, where I had all my craft supplies hanging out, and now it's turned into my pop studio. I don't necessarily buy them in bulk unless I find a really good price, but I do have a lot of pops in my house. My kids call our storage room the mini mall because it's there's boxes of pops to the ceiling of ones that I have just, stocked up on when they've been on sale. Some of the places that sell pops will have, really good sales or clearance deals on them. So I'll just buy a bunch all at once and have them on hand if I need them. And then I swap heads and bodies. So I'll have a giant bucket of extra heads and a giant bucket of extra bodies that I haven't used yet. So, it's very interesting in my studio because there's all these little heads rolling around and bodies. And when my kids have friends over, they think I'm really weird, but also really cool. So that works out.
And as far as selling them, have you had any pushback at all from Funko as far as, hey, but I would assume because they're custom, it's not really, you're not infringing on a trademark or anything like that, right?
Yeah, no, I haven't had any pushback. And from what I understand and have done some research, Funko is really supportive of the customizing community. And I just try to stay away from anything that they've done. There's been a couple that I did and then they did. So I'm just like, okay, I won't do that one again. For instance, Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors, I did one of him in the very beginning, and then they just released one. So I just won't do him again. So, which is unfortunate because he was really cute and I really liked the way he turned out. But I just try to stay away from anything that they've done. And
do you have, of all the ones that you've done so far, and I see on your Instagram page, there's so many, if you're listening right now and want to follow, it's Amber Kempter, AmberKempter, and the website again is BroadwayGoesPop.com. Of all the ones you've got, do you have one that you have been meaning to get to and haven't gotten to yet that's on your bucket list, or not bucket list, but dream list of ones you want to do?
Sure. There's so many, honestly. When I see shows, I design them in my head, so it's hard for me to even pick one. I've designed some pins for from the prom, and I'd really like to make those into pops also. I did make a prom pop for one of the ensemble members who I've been following since before she got the job in the show, so that was really cool. but I would love to do some of the main characters. I think right now that's the one that's kind of burning in my brain just because I just saw that show and I loved it so much. So I would say right now that's the one that's like I would love to get out. And also Be More Chill is just about to be open on Broadway, and I made a Michael Mell pop from that show, but I also want to do Jeremy, the other main character. So I would say those probably are the two that are kind of, burning in my brain right now that I'd love to get out there.
And since you're doing so many current pops, you mentioned obviously Hamilton, but also Prom, and the other ones you've done, have you gotten any response, retweets, or messages from the stars who you're modeling these after? They said, "Hey, I want one," or anything like that? What's the most exciting one you've gotten?
I've made pops for a lot of people in the shows. Almost every person who's been in Hamilton since I started this has gotten a pop. I tried to make one for almost everybody, and they are the most amazing people on this planet. I'm telling you, they are humble and thankful and incredible human beings. And I've gotten to hand deliver them to them after the show backstage, and they are so appreciative, and it's just the best experience. And I don't know if I could pick one that's my favorite because they're all such great people. The first pop I ever delivered in person was to Javon McFerrin, who was one of the understudies in Hamilton. He actually just left the show. But his response to the pop made me obsessed with delivering them in person. It's so much better than just sending them in the mail.
Right.
So when I go to New York, I try to bring as many with me as I can so that I can have the pleasure of getting to see them open the box and see their look on their face when they see the pop. So yeah, the response from the Broadway community has been just amazing, and they're all just such great people, and I feel like they have been part of my journey also. Their support has been part of my journey, so I appreciate all of them so much.
Boy, if you have any kind of anxiety, having to transport these on a plane would make me, they must go in a carry-on, I would assume. So
Yep, they do. I have them. Yeah, I have them super wrapped, and they come in my carry-on because I don't want them under the plane at all.
Right. Well, it's just such a fantastic story. How you were able to give up your day job to do something you love. Like I said, that's I think everybody's dream. So congratulations. Once again, the website is BroadwayGoesPop.com. Amber Kempter, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
And we're going to take our last break, come back and wrap things up, tell you more about our premier sponsor, Discover, stcharles.com, and more. Stand by.
Great hair. May the force be with you. This is Susan Eisenberg, voiceover actress, and you are listening to Geek to Me Radio.
We are back. The voice you heard, Susan Eisenberg. We've had her on the show several times in the past. She's probably our most prolific guest. She's always a joy to talk to, and she'll be joining us on March 24th. Next week, we'll be talking about the release of Justice League versus the Fatal Five on Blu-ray and DVD, starring her, and Kevin Conroy's back as Batman, George Newbern back as Superman. We're going to be giving away a couple of copies that day. So definitely you need to follow me on Twitter at Geek to Me Radio. Follow me on Instagram as well at Geek to Me Radio. And of course, Facebook.com/Geek to Me Radio. Give the page a like there if you would. You can find us on YouTube. Joey V, my executive producer, always does a great job putting these shows up for me on my YouTube page. So if you are at work and you kind of want to put it on in the background and just put your headphones in and listen to it while you're at work, you can do that from YouTube. Go to YouTube, look for Geek to Me Radio. Want to make sure we thank once again our premier sponsor, Historic St. Charles. Discover, stcharles.com is that website. They've been with us since the beginning. We started this in August of 2017. And they've immediately jumped on board, said this is great. They love it. They do so many cool things. If you're in the greater St. Louis, St. Charles area, go over there. It's just like taking a step back in time. There's so many cool and amazing things to see. You could literally spend the whole weekend there, and a lot of people do. and never get bored. There's all sorts of fun things to do. If you're an outdoor enthusiast, there's the bike riding on the Katy Trail, go jogging up and down there. You can do all sorts of fun things in Frontier Park. If you're a history buff, they got all the historic buildings that are just great to see. The original cobblestone streets are there. The architecture, the little placards telling you this was the building where this happened. This was the first governor's house from the state of Missouri, because St. Charles was the first official state capital of Missouri before it was moved to Jeff City. If you're a foodie, they got tons of places up and down the street to eat. If you're from out of town, you're like, well, I'm not in the St. Louis area, this doesn't affect me. Yes, it does, because they've got fantastic bed and breakfasts. Come in town, stay at one of those. If you need something with a little more modern amenities, they've got great hotels, world-class stuff you can stay at, and just enjoy, just take it in. Spring's right around the corner. Summer, right after that, a lot of people want to take vacations. St. Charles is a great place to do it. If you're planning a wedding and looking for someplace cool to get your wedding photos taken, that's where my sister-in-law had her photos taken, down there on historic Main Street. It's a great place. Something for everyone. Literally something for everyone. It's a fantastic place to visit. If you've not been before, you need to go see it. If you've been before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Check out the website to get more information. DiscoverStCharles.com is that website. We are going to be back next week, like I said, talking with Susan Eisenberg. We had a guest on called, his name was Nigel Tomasi, talking about a Kickstarter that he had for one of his projects. That Kickstarter didn't quite make its goal, which I felt bad about, because we've always had people come on and talk about their Kickstarters, and they always make it. So I kind of consider myself a good luck charm for these Kickstarter campaigns. But he said he decided to relaunch it, and it hit its goals immediately. The second time around, he wants to come back on, give our listeners who may have contributed an update, talk about what they've got coming out from that. So we'll have him on air as well. We've got a lot of fun things in the works for the coming weeks. I don't want to give anything away because I'm still working on a couple of guests that I'm very excited about. And we are looking at possibly doing a live broadcast from Planet Comic Con that last weekend of March. We're still getting our ducks in a row for that. So lots of cool things coming down the pike. I would like to say, too, we're trying to expand the show. We're trying to get into a couple different markets. We need your help. If you know of someone wanting to advertise, get their show, or not their show, on my show, get their product or their brand or anything out to a larger audience, radio is ubiquitous. Radio gets that out there so that we have a lot of listeners who listen to this in the St. Louis area and stream us online. And then there's also the after fact that we have this put up on Podomatic, which goes out to iTunes, everything. So these ads live in perpetuity. If you have a business or something that you would think might benefit, put them in touch with me. If they sign on for a 4-month contract or greater, we'll give you 10% of the sales on that sponsor that comes over. So I'm putting out a bounty. I feel like Darth Vader putting out a price on the Millennium Falcon. If you want to be the Boba Fett or the IG-88 who brings that bounty in, send me an email, james@geektomeradio.com. That's going to do it for us today, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks to my guests, Heather Antos and Amber Kempter. Until next week.
It's not in the way you watch I zombie. It's not in the way you watch The Flash. It's not in the way you love Scotty Young art. It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Broadway. Good night.